men's mental toughness is just toxic masculinity rebranded, writer Jill Stark says. A cult hero, Ned Brockman's grueling 1,600-kilometer charity run has Aussies talking, but not everybody sees it in a positive light. What do you think about this?
I mean, it's just one more absurd headline adding to the many, many things that we can blame toxic masculinity for, which is absurd. I mean, for me, it's part of like a bigger problem where men's mental health needs are often sort of different to women's. And like some of the crazy things men do, such as run 1,600 kilometers and raising millions of pounds, are just outside the view of people like Jill, who think such a thing as toxic and not actually an amazing achievement for anyone.
Despite the fact that they're raising tons of money for charity as well.
Yeah. So a man, he ran 1,600 kilometers, raised maybe 1.5 million Australian dollars for the homeless, which is like, I don't know what more you could possibly want. That's still toxic masculinity somehow. And it just isn't. And yeah, I mean, one of the many absurd, we could have a whole podcast just going through these headlines and just one of the many things that just washes over you. But thankfully, some things are just a little bit too stupid to be offensive. And that sort of qualifies very much so into that category.
What do you make of the current world of advocacy for men?
Honestly, it seems to be quite splitting a little bit. I feel like as any movement becomes sort of larger, reaches a critical mass, which is a lovely thing, it seems to be fragmenting into different view sets, which we can't really afford to do. And I guess the elephant in the room is certain large organizations that are becoming, in my opinion, too entwined in politics and losing sight of their own mission statement, which is the first, second, and third priority is to help men and ultimately save men's lives. That's my priority. And unfortunately, we're in an area of advocacy that is just innately unpopular right now. It's uncomfortable and it requires, making some sacrifices and doing some things that are not going to get you a huge amount of credit, but are necessary nonetheless.
It's interesting to think about when a movement is too big to be small, but too small to be big. It's still kind of revolutionary, but has sufficient size to warrant splinter factions and different sort of approaches.
Well, I'm really interested in things like the diffusion of innovation, where basically maps how a movement becomes viral. And as I'm sure you know, you need about 13% of adoption by the public for it to go viral, and then it hits that mass market success. So you have that bell curve of the diffusion of innovation. And I've always wondered, where are we on that bell curve? When are we going to reach that tipping point of 12%, where the mass market, the early and late majority, as it's called, they're like, actually, this is something that I can now get on board with. The risk is now at an acceptable level. And I'm like, we're getting there. And I mean, I really want to get there together. I really feel like we need to work as a single unit here, and we need to keep communicating, and we need to sort of have the same shared objectives. So yeah, I mean, that's where I want to get to, and perhaps that'll be the end product of this podcast.